And there's a quote that I wanted to bring up from that you spoke about, is that if you don't keep creating, your mind will creatively sabotage you. And
Yeah.
it's so important. I'd love for you to dive into that, because I think
Yeah.
as much as we understand this kind of stuff, like really seeping it in, and your stories are a great way to understand it. So I'd love for you to break that down.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because I said that quote in like 2005 or 2006, and I would
Yeah.
now actually modify it in the consciousness we're in to literally creation is trying to happen through you. And if
Mhm.
you allow it to, amazing, powerful things are just, God's just trying to work through you.
Yeah.
Um, but when you keep yourself at a lower grade, meaning you spend the day flipping through social media,
Mhm.
stay in a job that doesn't align, stay in a relationship that isn't your truth, and you use these things as old addictions and energetic things to grab onto so you don't have to really meet you, which actually is where all the miracles are. You will creatively sabotage because you keep creating, but if you keep holding on to an old world thing that's not your truth, you're going to create from a lower frequency. So that's what anxiety is, the mind coming up with all the ways everything could go wrong. That's what worry is. Like you don't have to live in a world of worry, but if you're really think about, it's a matter, I think that when we get anxiety and worry and everything, it's because we're geniuses living in a lower frequency. I know I use this already, but really imagine a senior in Harvard going to third grade, how bored they'd be, how stagnant they'd be, how much they're not at their heart's edge and they're learning. It'd be a butterfly has to clip its wings and be with the caterpillars. It's like that will create depression and anger and make you mad at the world and make you create negative things, make you create judgment for other people, make you create hate, make you move that way. Right. So, this is why to me it's so important to free yourself from the addiction of living in the constant future and thinking over there is better. And like you said, that Jim Carrey quote, I sure never hit Jim Carrey level of fame, but I sure understand getting everything I want. And it just being this, like, you did it, got it. Now what? It's just like it's not anything. In fact, if it's the answer to my life, I noticed how much I would be scared of losing it now. So when
Yeah.
I booked Not Another Teen Movie, it was such a funny process because I would be like, just get me the audition. And then I got the audition. Just get me to producers. I get to producers. Okay, you booked the movie. Just get me the movie, please. I'll nail it. I nail the part. But then I'm waiting 9 months for them to edit it. And I don't know if they pulled my part out or not. So I spent 9 months paranoid that I would be pulled from it. I got what I wanted and I spent the whole time worrying. Then I get I'm in the movie and it made it. And I'm like, please be a hit and please get the next movie. And just
Yeah.
more, every time I got something I wanted, I got more enslaved to it because it's the answer to my life. So it better not leave. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the funny thing is like, don't trick yourself into getting a circumstance that you want will make you happy. It will make you go, what's next? And don't leave me. Instead of going for what do I want in the physical world, still have that, but ask yourself, what would evolve me out of the part of me that has this addictive thing that thinks that I'll be happy when I accomplish something? Still, you can have things, but don't think that the things will ever complete you. You're here to learn fully what you are, and you'll discover you're completely complete, you're infinite, and everything that you think is the answer is a dream that is helping you escape the completion of what you are. So find your completeness first. Ask yourself, what would move me towards more me, and what's me moving towards the patterns that I learned in my childhood to stay the small self that hopes that it's not hurt or abandoned again. Like, you're either moving towards the true you or you're moving away from it, moving towards the old software of what you were taught you are that you're not. And one will feel freer and better gradually, and one will feel more and more tense and horrible, and you'll have to have addictions to keep going in that. But the real you is infinite creator. The real you can create better than your favorite band, than your favorite comedian, everything. And then we go, yeah, right. And when you look at your past, but you still never lived in the true you that God's working through. So so yeah, if you're holding on to some stagnant thing, you're cutting yourself off from the flow of ongoing 24/7 creativity that is so constant for me that I have to just allow it to come up and not even create everything it says. Like, it's like going, here's an idea, here's a video, here's a short, here's a book, here's whatever. And sometimes I'll just sit there and watch them pass. you
Yeah.
know, and just be like, and just become the creative space that some of it comes out, but not even get addicted to, I have to create everything, you know. Sometimes like Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, he like has 20 songs a day or something going through his head. He's not going to make an album every day. He just starts playing chords and then pass. And I saw an interview with his wife once, and she said the amount of songs that I've heard that no one will ever hear that Brian Wilson created, it blows my mind. So you can even become a creative being, and you don't have to get everything out. Just start to connect to the flow of the abundance of constant creativity that you are, and you'll be shocked at what the hell happens to you, right?
It's so true. The thing that one of my first coach told me was that you do a disservice. Well, I guess I said it, but it was something that he said that came to me, was that you do a disservice by not bringing your unique gifts into the world. I think so
Yeah.
many of us are going through life, working at a job that they don't enjoy, or doing something that they don't feel aligned with, and then they never take a step into something that they know they kind of feel a little bit aligned with. Like this podcast, I started in my car, no like solo episodes for 100 episodes, wasn't able to get people on the podcast at the time, but I was like, I feel like this is the path I should go down. And it wasn't focusing on the results, but it was more focusing on, is this the direction that I want to go in? And that was the only thought that I was thinking. And doing
Good
that was
job.
like, it was just doing that, and doing it every single week. And now it's a solo episode, and it's an interview every single week. And I appreciate you for that, because it's evolved so much. And then there's of course so much I want to do, so much further along. But like you said, it's like, it's not getting to some, if I got to the end point and I stopped doing interviews, that's kind of like, why would I do that? That the whole purpose is to have an interview every single week. There is no end point that I'm trying to get to, but doing this every
Right.
single week is. And I think when we look at that through the lens of whatever we're doing, well, we're going to enjoy a hell of a lot more. But I think that part of ourselves, that the shadow, I guess you can call it, that we don't want to face, that we don't want to bring up, that we don't want to address because we don't want to give ourselves the time. What do you feel throughout your journey, or even the people that you've worked with? You've worked with thousands of people one-on-one just the past few years. What do you feel has allowed people to face that inner darkness that they don't want to face, and come from a place of grace and love, like you say?
I think the fact that the darkness is unavoidable now. It's
Yeah.
almost like before, an analogy I've used is I feel like we've been able to water ski above the ocean of our soul and stay on
Mm.
top of it with our circumstances. Like before 2020, maybe you had a decent enough job, you didn't have to look at anything. Maybe you had the ability to travel or go to restaurants anytime you wanted. There was no pattern break there. And then all of a sudden, no matter what you feel politically about the mass and everything, I'm sure not an advocate on all that stuff. I just mean, if you look at it from God's perspective, God's like, okay, everyone, be in your house for 2 years, make it impossible to talk to people at the store because you're masked. Like, all of a sudden, the benefits of that are like, I have to hear what's inside my body, I have to hear what's in here, right? And it's not a coincidence that in this time, so much other darkness is coming up publicly, like who the government really is and what the media was doing, and how they're all, and also how we have the capacity to hear other dark things happening. Like child trafficking existed in the 80s too, but no one wanted to talk about it because they were in their own entrepreneurial, everything's fine world. And why would I'm not even going to talk about that, or what's happening to people that are in other places, or animals, or whatever else. It's just now really like, now we are all having to go in and look at what's both in our body. It's almost like God is going, all the abuse you went through in your past, we're going to alchemize now. We're going to see it and cry it out. So you stop being a character that you created to not feel that trauma again. And so the world is doing the same thing. Like it's just bringing to light all kinds of stuff. And the people that were controlling things can't now because it's all coming up. So collectively and individually, all of our darkness is too loud, and it makes our little addictive, next step that we have as an achievement to block this impossible, because you can't help but see this at one level. So it's almost like God's like aiming that flashlight more and more in the gut and the chest where all the pain is, and it's just like here, and you're sitting here going, maybe I'll have a drink, and it's just like, the real thing's here, all of this is just sentences, and you can't run from it anymore, right? So that's great. Like, that's awesome that we now are like, it's so Hawkins-esque that we're removing all of the lies that are in our bodies, all of the us's that we created out of avoiding trauma is coming out of the body. All of the stories of our not enoughness, all of our I'm a failure, all of how we were raised as the truth is all leaving. And we just have to get really present and look at it and stop running from it. But it's now at a point where you can't avoid it. And all of the shame that's in our body and guilt and fear and everything is just coming to light. And if you understand that's what's going on, you can collaborate with the universe and participate in this. And it's amazing. If you don't and you think you are the pattern that you created to avoid trauma, this is a horrifying time. And when you hear a lot about the 3D, 5D split, when you hear people talk about the split between the two worlds, right? That's what that is, in my opinion. You're either the now and you're letting the false you die, or you're the false you and you're protecting the false you. And some people are going to go to the grave protecting that lie because they think that if I feel it, without them consciously knowing this, they
Yeah.
think that if I feel that lie, I'll be abused again. And so everything is don't be hurt for some people, and everything is hurt me all you want in order to liberate me. So you're either on the operating table letting it remove the lies, or you're protecting yourself and going down with the lies.
It's so powerful to hear you speak about this kind of stuff because, as you said, most of it for most people is unconscious. And so they're going through a life of just kind of like sleeping through a life, missing out on everything that could be possible because they're suppressing parts of themselves that they don't want to address, or they are unconsciously not recognizing that they're suppressing or repressing. And it's so important to take this kind of perspective. And there's another quote I want to bring up for you is that if you are justifying keeping something, you have to let go of it.
Yes.
And it's like people are doing this unconsciously, justifying the life that they don't want because they think that the life that they do want or the person that they can become is just not an option. You started young, as we spoke earlier, is like you started young, recognizing that that didn't have to be that way in comedy and in your career. But internally, when did that become prominent for you? When was that time for you?
That the revelation about justifying something.
Mm-hmm.
So that was in 2010 when I was really understanding this principle that I worked with my friend Diego, and he said this point that we realized: when you let go of something, the only reason you stress is your mind can measure what you will lose and it can't
Yeah.
see what you'll gain. And there are a lot of times where we're holding on to things that are not us. And one way that we can help ourselves hold on to things that are not us and not a part of us is to justify it. To give you an example, how weird would it be if I talked about my 6-year-old daughter with justification? Like, wouldn't it be weird if I'm like, well, she does get good medical, so I'll keep being her dad, right? That would be like, what? Or if you're on a date with someone and they were like, you know what? I like your hair, so I'll date you, right? You'd be like, this person doesn't like me,
Yeah.
right? So we're using justification. And I don't justify my job. It's like my calling and it's here. I don't justify meditating. But we do know what it's like to be like, yeah, that person treats me like crap, but they took me to a nice dinner once. Or I hate this job, but I will get a promotion later. What you're doing in that moment is you're making your mind make sense out of why you're ignoring your heart. And by activating your mind and your ego to ignore your heart, you're moving into your ego by making that decision. It's more in charge than the heart. When you let go and you follow the heart, it lets go of the ego. So justifying is a way to, if you find yourself going, you know, this relationship isn't aligned, even if it's a positive thing, like this job isn't good for me, but it's a great job, I should be thankful for this job. That first sentence was telling the truth, and now you're making a thing that does exist. You should be thankful for everything, but just because something's even amazing doesn't mean it's your calling. There's even better than that sometimes that's coming in. And so we have a hard time letting go of things when we justify them because we need to make sense out of why we're keeping it. So in 2010, I was letting go of an agency. I had a huge agency that I could easily justify keeping because they were giving me auditions for movies. But I heard my heart go, yeah, but they don't want me to be the speaker that I am. They don't align. They're taking 10% of the gigs that I'm getting on my own. They're heavy, right? And I heard my body go, I want to let go of them. But the justification was, but they get me auditions. I won't have any auditions for movies or anything anymore. And I was justifying. So I was like, I have to let go of them. So I dropped them, And the next day, like Jim Carrey and Eckhart Tolle's people call me and ask me to come speak at a Jim Carrey Eckhart Tolle event. And the audience was full of producers of movies and stuff. And I'm sitting there in this free frequency of just fully finding my voice, that I now am a person that was eating different, was done with addictive things, all kinds of different patterns, was off social media, was let go of my dream career and fired the biggest agency in Hollywood. All of a sudden now I'm in this place of total, I am enough, and I'm just as enough as Jim Carrey and Eckhart Tolle. I'm not some unworthy kid that's with them. I'm really enough and I'm free. And so I did a set in front of them and killed, like you wouldn't believe, to Jim Carrey and Eckhart Tolle at the Saban Theater, and hung with them for hours after, and really started understanding this thing that, like, I almost kept the agency, which would have kept something that didn't align, which would have made me feel heavier, which would have made me feel unworthier, which would have made me perform from a more please like me place. Everything was different when I let go of it. But my justification almost kept it. But I heard myself go, I'm justifying, I have to let go of it. Because when you follow your heart, there's no explanation for why. Right?
I align so much with that. And I think when you do step into that, there's no way to explain that. There's no way
Right.
to contextualize it until you've done it, right? And I spoke with Light Watkins a few weeks ago, and it's like it's trusting your heart voice and being able to do that in everything that you do, instead of listening to your mind that's automatically going to produce an answer that you don't want, or a future that you really don't want to attract yourself into. I see a continuous pattern for you, and it's that you play to win, you don't play not to lose. And I think that a lot of people are going through life through that lens, and whether it's with money or with success or accomplishments or whatever that looks like, and you talk a lot about money, I'd love to dive into that as well. It's like,
Sure.
how can we start playing to win instead of playing not to lose?
Well, not to lose is fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes to win is fear too, if it has
Mm-hmm.
the same tone as not to lose, even if we're saying
Yeah.
the word win.
Yeah.
I would say I'm here for my soul's freedom,
Mm-hmm.
and everything is what is taking me closer to the truth. The truth is not painful. I mean, the truth can bring up the lies that need to be deleted,
Yeah.
but and that can be painful if you're attached to them. But the truth isn't painful at all. It, like, meaning like the truth of what you are. I don't mean the truth of the
Of
ins and
course.
outs in the third D world of what the government's doing or whatever. The truth of what you are isn't painful. And so I'm here for that truth. I'm here for the knowing of what I am. And um, that's what I'm playing for. Like, literally every decision is, does that move me closer towards this kind of open-ended unknown that I know will release some more false me, and then will be alchemized with more magical things that move me and guide me faster, right? And that's what playing to win is. It doesn't mean like playing that I get to 1 million followers, or that I,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's playing to soul, playing
Yeah.
to truth, playing to what am I, you know?
Yeah.
That's my biggest thing too, is my intention. I have the intention of knowing what I truly am. That's what my intention is. That's the highest in the hierarchy of everything, right? Bigger than everything. Know what I truly am, and then bring that into everything. Bring that into parenting, bring that into being a friend, right? Or whatever. I want to know what I truly am. So if things seem to be going bad, I know they're moving me towards what I truly am. And they're hitting all the trauma patterns that are what I'm not, so they can disappear. If things are going good, I'm moving towards what I truly am, right? Every single thing is that, right? So that's my intention, is what am I,
Mm-hmm.
right? I want to know what I am, because more than what can I do, right? What can I do could have a false me that's still doing stuff out of don't hurt me. And what if I go, no, what am I? From there, what is done is bigger, because I'm in a bit bigger frequency of the now, right? So that's what my fascination is. What am I?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember growing up, I always looked at life. I had the victim mindset, as most people do. If life is happening to me, life is happening to me. I lost my father and uncle both at 37 years old, and my grandfather passed a few months before his retirement. And I was like,
Wow.
why is this happening to me? Like, why does this keep happening? And there was a moment when I asked myself, how is this happening for me? Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? And genuinely changing the question I asked myself, it prompted a different answer, of course, as our brain works. And my life has changed forever. And so asking a different question and seeing that through a different lens, I wanted to touch on that because it's so, so important. I value your time, and I know that we're getting to the end. So I want to ask one last question that I ask every guest.
Sure.
The question is, what belief are you currently unlearning?
What belief am I currently unlearning? What a great question. The idea that Kyle exists at all.
Mm.
The idea, I mean, and here's a big one. This is going to sound really weird out of context and won't make sense to a lot of people. And you got to know I mean it in a way that's amazing. But there's a way that we hear that person doesn't meet my needs. That person doesn't meet my needs. I got fascinated by what if my needs are the ego's needs? And what if I'm always trying to find what fits what my ego wants? But what if starving it of those things makes it die? And so I've noticed that there is a story of Kyle, and everyone has a story of their name that's based on their past experiences, which mostly came from characters we created to avoid moments of trauma when we were 5. And what if that isn't real? What if the entire story of what I am, I mean, is nothing, and there's no such thing as a separate self at all? And I am watching the slow demise of a separate self. And I know right now that you are talking to yourself right now, right? There is no separate. And the part that creates the separate, like I'm this person and you're this age, or I'm this whatever, those things are things that we fight for as a separate self. There really, as we keep going, is no such thing. And the more we just start, oh, here's another one too. I'm more and more not a fan of only speaking your truth. I'm a much bigger fan of hearing your truth and then speaking whatever you want to share. But
Mm.
there's a lot of people that believe the only way I can get this truth out is if I scream it. And now you have all these egos going, see, I did it. But it's all out of a fear of I don't want to waste my life. But the truth in your body really wants to be seen by you. You're still welcome to share it, but don't think you're imprisoned until you say it. It wants to be heard. So the big switch for me right now is I still will share and do my calls and do my events and everything. But there's a lot of truths in my body that just want to be seen, and then they die. And I realize they weren't truths, they're egoic truths. So there's a lot of people speaking egoic truths, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily the truth. And I started realizing in this world, there's what's true, meaning like that politician really did say this or do this secretly, or that person said this about you. And then there's the truth, which is what you are and is the permanent thing that's beyond time, that's infinite. That is the truth, and I'm fascinated by that truth. And everything else that's within the story of Kyle is temporary and doesn't exist. And so you don't have to get caught in the temporary of anything, right? Because it's all passing. Still create, but create from the permanent, and love from the permanent and receive from the permanent. And don't get so caught in the crap between issues with other things and other people. And the charge can go about that because there is no actual you. So I'm unlearning that there even is a Kyle.